What's going on, guys? I'm a regular guy with the Regular Guy Firearms channel, and today we're going to talk about ACOGs and ballistic drop compensators in general. What we're also going to do is we're going to talk about red dots and how to use them to your advantage at greater distances. So, we're going to start with the easy one. This is geared more towards the military dudes that end up having to use these two optics and everything else, but they're fairly popular with everyone else. So, here we go. Generally speaking, let me adjust my markers. You have on like the TA-31 ACOG, right? It's the military issue ACOG. Okay. You have a chevron, and then you have a little hash mark, and then under that, further down, you have little increments. As it goes further down, you have slightly smaller ones. So, how does this pertain to us? How do we use it and everything else? Well, what we have here is a ballistic drop compensator. Okay. Now, for guys who aren't seasoned on this, and for guys who haven't been taught properly on how to use this, and this actually goes as a quite common type of thing for military dudes that they're not taught effectively how to use it. You have a human silhouette, right? Now, with the human silhouette, we have your shoulder width. That's right here. Okay? That shoulder width is about 18 inches. Okay? It's about 18 inches across. That is the average width of a dude from shoulder to shoulder. Now, how do we use this to our advantage? First things first, we have to realize what the ballistic drop compensator means with an ACOG. So, for instance, you have this portion of the chevron right here, and with this portion of the chevron, you actually have your 100-yard indication, like the very tip. That is what you would shoot to hit stuff accurately at 100 yards. Or meters, I'm sorry. And yes, there are differences between the two, but the military-issued ACOGs are set to meters, not yards. So make sure that you know which one you're buying, by the way. So that's your 100-meter point of aim for that optic. The 200-yard line point of aim is the inside tip of the chevron. So at 100, you'll hold at the heart and you'll hit with the very top, and on the inside tip of the chevron, you'll hit at 200. Well, how do we figure out the difference between 1 and 200 yards easily through the optic? The edges of this, okay, are what you would use to measure a person at 200 yards. So if within this you get the dude's shoulders, okay, meaning edge of the portion of the chevron and edge of the portion of the chevron right here, if you get that there, that's 200 yards. Hold with the inside upper portion of it and you'll hit them directly in the chest. Now, the next one is a 300-yard line tick. Okay, the 300-yard line tick is just set as is. It just looks like a little vertical red thing. With the fiber optic cables on the TA-31s and stuff like that issued to military personnel, it glows a little bit red. Okay, that's at 300. And how do we tell that he's at 300? If he falls inside of these two arms here of the chevron. If he falls inside of that, he's obviously farther away than 200 yards, so we're going to use that as our point of reference. And basically, even if he's not exactly at 200, like he's at 275 or whatever, if you use the 300-yard line tick, or even the 200-yard line tick in most cases, you're going to hit him square in the chest. And yes, we want to hit the upper chest. So, what's next? These little hash marks here are basically different yard lines, and they are usually marked 4, 5, 6, 700 yards, 8, and so on. So it is what it is as far as that's concerned, so we can go ahead and use it that way. Now, there are other versions of the ACOG that are out there, okay? And my personal favorite is the TA-01. Now, the TA-01 is very different in how it's used, right? Because you have thick crosshairs that adjust themselves into finer crosshairs, right? And then from there we have more hash marks. Okay, now, as is with most scopes like this, the very center of the crosshair, that's your 100-yard line point. And then each individual vertical tick, in the instance that you can see on both of these, each one of those vertical ticks is the measurement for that particular yard line. Like for instance, the very center of the crosshairs is 100. That's 200. Okay? The one right under it, that's 300. And then 400. And then 500. And they'll be marked starting from 300 yards and down. So that's a real simple way to just get used to it and everything else. I personally really do like the TAO one just because it's a little bit faster and you can be a little more definitive because of the vertical hash marks and stuff. Now, there's something else that I can go over too, and you can actually use a red dot as a ballistic drop compensator in a very, very simple sense. And we're about to go over that here in a minute. Just let me erase my stuff. Alright, so I have my board set up. Okay, as we established earlier, the average width of a dude from shoulder to shoulder is about 18 inches, right? Now, we've seen in the ACOG that it's got a ballistic drop compensator and stuff like that, and you can actually measure using the shoulders how far away he is. Cool, but a lot of guys will say that you can't do that with a red dot. Well, can you? Here's the deal. Most red dots, and that is most aim points and stuff like that, will run a 2-minute of angle or a 4-minute of angle dot. Okay, keeping this as brief as possible. Okay, I'm going to describe minute of angle. It's a unit of measurement that a lot of guys use for distance and stuff like that, and making corrections and everything else. Essentially, a minute of angle, 1 minute of angle at 100 yards is 1 inch. Okay, a minute of angle at 200 yards is 2 inches, and 1 minute of angle at 300 yards is 3 inches. 2 minutes of angle at 100 yards is 2 inches. 2 minutes at 200 yards is 4, and at 300 it's 6 inches. Okay. Now, how does that pertain to the dot? If you have a 2-minute of angle dot, at 100 yards it'll cover 2 inches of the target. Okay. If you have a 4-minute of angle dot, it'll cover 4 inches of that target. Okay? So, assuming that you're still following me here, how do we now use this to determine how far away that guy is? Okay, with a red dot, you should be able to hit the shit out of stuff from 0 to 300 yards. Right? Now, let's assume that we have a 50-yard zero. And this is why 50-yard zeros work extra great for stuff like this. Because with a 5.56 rifle, right? Your 50-yard zero matches 200 yards. Meaning if I'm hitting the exact heart at 50 yards, then I take it out to 200 yards, my point of aim will be the same for my point of impact. Now, the differences between 0 and 200 yards will be fairly minor, but it's pretty much in the same area from 0 to 200 yards. And if I want to hit him at 300 yards in the heart, I'm going to hold at the throat. Make sense? So, with that being said, okay, with a 2-minute of angle dot at 100 yards, it's going to cover 2 inches of said bad guy. And then 4 and then 6 inches. Right? We'll be able to tell how far away he is, meaning if I have to adjust for a hold, if this dot covers at or a little more than a third of that dude's body. If I take this dot and put the exact 3 or 9 o'clock on the left or right shoulder. Obviously, it has to correspond. This portion of the dot starts on my right shoulder, or your left, depending on how you're looking at this. Okay. So it'll start here, and if it covers a little more than a third of me, he's 300 yards or a little more away. If it covers more than that, he's far. For a 2 minute of angle dot, he's far. Okay, obviously. So that's a quick way to figure it out, because if I cover less than that, he's at 200 nit. Now, this is actually quite a bit more difficult than this. This is actually why I prefer a 4 minute of angle dot on red dots. Reason being is that it's 4, 8, and 12 inches, okay, for 1, 2, and 300 yards. At 300 yards, right, if I start this portion of the dot on this shoulder, if he's at 300 yards, it'll cover 2/3 of that guy. You'll see it immediately. It's really quick to see. It's harder to judge what a third is of a dude, but it's always easier to figure out how much of him is left. And if what's left of him is less than a third, he's at 300 away, hold at the throat, take the shot. Okay? Obviously, when it comes to like combat and shit, yeah, it's going to be significantly more difficult. You might not even think about it, but wait, you can. Okay? Because the human skull is a little greater than 10 inches across. If you cover his whole dome piece at 300 yards, he's about at 300 yards, which is probably all you would end up seeing anyway if you can see him. Because if you're trading bullets with folks, the only thing that you might have is his dome, because he's in cover. Makes sense? So you can still tell very quickly with a 4 minute of angle dot how far away he is. So, just a thought, and it's stuff that I put into practice before, and it works. Just make sure that your dot isn't too bright or way too dim. You know what I mean? It has to be just bright enough to where the dot's clear. But this shit does work. I suggest that you run out and go try it. Remember, guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.